Adanna met Tunde on a sunny afternoon in Ibadan. She was running late for a meeting, and he bumped into her at a coffee shop, spilling her drink. He apologized with such charm that she couldn't help but laugh. That small accident turned into a long conversation, and by the end of it, he had her number and her attention. Tunde was the kind of man who made big promises and backed them up with sweet gestures. He sent good morning texts, surprised her with flowers on random Tuesdays, and listened like he truly cared. Adanna, usually careful with her heart, found herself falling fast. Their love grew quickly. In just a few months, they were already talking about building a future together, kids, a house in Lekki, vacations in Zanzibar. He made her feel safe, like she had finally found her person. They had inside jokes, lazy Sunday mornings, and dreams they painted with wide strokes. Her friends teased her about how smitten she looked. She didn't mind. She was happy. Deeply happy. But just when everything seemed perfect, the sky darkened. Adanna started feeling tired all the time. There was a lump she had ignored for too long. One hospital visit led to another, and then came the words that changed everything: breast cancer. She froze. Her whole world tilted. But she thought at least Tunde would be by her side. He had promised forever. And she believed him. Until life began to show her who he truly was. Adanna was just 29 when the doctor said the words that didn't even feel real: breast cancer. She sat in that cold hospital room, staring at the floor, trying to breathe. Everything blurred. How could this be happening? She was young, healthy, full of plans. One minute she was laughing with Tunde over jollof rice and Netflix, and the next, she was being told about biopsies, chemo, and losing her hair. It felt like a cruel joke. She thought Tunde would be her rock. He had always said, "I've got you." She believed it. So when she called him after the diagnosis, her voice shaking, she expected arms around her, comfort, something. But his voice was quiet, distant. "Wow, that's heavy," he said. That was it. "No, I'm coming over." "No, we'll fight this together." Just silence. Cold silence. The weeks after that were even harder. She started treatment. The nausea was unbearable. Her body felt like it was betraying her. But what hurt more than the needles, the hospital beds, and the hair falling out in clumps was the way Tunde slowly started slipping away. He still answered her calls, but not with love, with duty. No warmth. No tenderness. Just checked out replies and excuses. Adanna would lie in bed after chemo, body aching, and cry, not just from the pain, but from the feeling that the man she loved was disappearing. She was fighting for her life, and he couldn't even fight to hold her hand. The cold in his eyes cut deeper than any diagnosis. Adanna moved to Port Harcourt for her treatment, hoping the change of city would give her a fresh start and better care. She thought Tunde would visit, or at least call every day. But the days turned into weeks, and slowly, painfully, he started disappearing. He missed her first chemo appointment. Then the second. She would wait, dressed and hopeful, eyes on the door, but he never came. Her phone would light up, but never with his name. Messages were left unread. Calls went unanswered. When he did reply, it was short and cold. "Been busy," he would say. That was all. So, her mother became her person. It was her mother who held her hand during the long hours in the hospital. Her mother who brought her soup, wiped her tears, rubbed her back when she was vomiting at 2 a.m. It should have been Tunde. That chair beside her hospital bed had his name written on it in her heart. But it was empty. And every day that emptiness grew heavier. Then came the photo. One of her close friends, trying to protect her, sent it with hesitation. "I thought you should know." It was a rooftop bar in Lagos. The golden hour light was perfect, and there he was, Tunde, laughing, relaxed, holding hands with another woman. A beautiful girl in a tight dress, healthy and glowing. They looked like a couple straight out of an Instagram reel. Adanna stared at the photo for a long time. She didn't cry at first. Her heart just went quiet. She couldn't understand how someone who once promised her forever was now out there, smiling with someone else, while she was losing weight, losing hair, and sometimes feeling like she was losing herself. It wasn't just betrayal. It was abandonment at her most vulnerable moment. And somehow that hurt more than the cancer itself. Adanna knew the chemo would take her hair soon, so she decided to take control before it did. One quiet evening, she sat in front of the mirror, heart pounding, and picked up the clippers. Her mother stood beside her, holding her hand. As the first strands fell, she felt a strange mix of fear and freedom. When it was done, she looked at her reflection, bald, tired, but brave. She took a shaky breath. She thought maybe, just maybe, Tunde would show up. Maybe he'd hold her face, kiss her head, tell her she was still beautiful. But he didn't come. He didn't call. Days passed, and instead of hearing from him, she heard whispers. Through friends, through mutuals, through the kind of gossip that spreads faster than truth. Tunde was seeing someone new. A healthy girl from Lagos. Pretty. Loud on social media. Always posting photos from brunches and beach houses. And worst of all, people said Tunde was telling others that Adanna was too much drama. That she had become a burden. That he needed peace, not problems. Those words shattered something inside her. She never confronted him. Never sent a message. Never picked up the phone to ask, why? Because deep down she already knew. He couldn't handle her pain. He chose the easy way out. And while he chased distractions, she was learning to live with the pain he left behind. But her silence wasn't weakness. It was power. It was her way of saying, I don't need you to see my worth anymore. Every time she looked in the mirror and saw her bald head, she reminded herself, she was still here. Still fighting. Still standing. She might have lost her hair, but she hadn't lost her strength. Tunde may have walked away when things got hard. But Adanna? She stayed. She showed up for herself. And that silence said everything. Adanna was used to crying alone by now. The nights were the hardest, the pain, the nausea, the fear of not waking up the next day. There were moments she felt like giving up, like she was disappearing bit by bit. Tunde was gone. Her body was weak. Her world had changed completely. But somewhere deep inside her, something refused to break. She still had a voice. One night, wrapped in a blanket and too sick to sleep, she opened her laptop. She didn't know what she was doing, really. She just needed to let it out. So she started writing. About the first chemo session. About shaving her hair. About being left in the middle of the storm. She named the blog Fighting Fire with Faith. It felt right because that's what every day felt like, walking through fire holding on to faith. She didn't expect anyone to read it. But the next morning there were 3 comments. Then 10. Then hundreds. Women, some fighting cancer, some who had survived it, and others who had simply felt pain, reached out. They thanked her for being honest. For saying what they were too afraid to say out loud. Her words made them feel less alone. Adanna was shocked. For so long she thought she had nothing left. But here she was, making strangers feel seen, heard, and stronger. She kept writing. Not just about the sickness but about healing. About choosing to stay kind in the face of heartbreak. About slowly finding pieces of herself again. That blog became her medicine. Her therapy. Her new kind of love. Adanna was still breaking. Physically, emotionally, but at the same time she was rebuilding. Piece by piece. Not with someone else's help, but with her own strength. And now the same voice that once cried quietly into pillows was lifting up other women, one blog post at a time. The day finally came. After months of pain, fear, and endless hospital visits, Adanna walked into the chemo room for the last time. Her body was tired, her skin pale, but her spirit? Unshaken. When the final treatment was over, a nurse handed her a small brass bell. It was tradition. Survivors rang it to mark the end of their chemo journey. Her hands trembled as she reached for it. And then, with tears rolling down her cheeks, she rang it. The sound echoed like a song. A soft, beautiful sound that said, I made it. That bell wasn't just about finishing chemo. It was a goodbye to the pain, to the fear, and to everything she had lost. Including Tunde. He never showed up again. Not for the final session. Not for the bell. But strangely, Adanna no longer felt that empty space. Because something else had taken root inside her, strength. Deep, quiet, unstoppable strength. She didn't need him. She never really did. Instead, she walked out of that hospital with a new mission. All those late nights blogging, connecting with women from across the continent, had sparked something bigger. She realized there were so many young African women like her. Battling cancer or chronic illness alone, ashamed, or unheard. She wanted to change that. So she did. With the little savings she had, and the huge heart she carried, she launched the Imara Foundation. Imara meant strength, and that's what she wanted to give other women. Strength to fight, to speak up, to live fully even in the face of illness. She began hosting online support groups, sharing resources and organizing wellness care packages for young patients across Nigeria and beyond. What started as her private pain had become something powerful, something lasting. The girl who once felt broken now stood tall. Bald head held high, voice louder than ever. Cancer was gone. Tunde was gone. But Adanna remained, stronger, louder, and more on fire than ever before. This wasn't just the end of a chapter. Adanna never planned to be famous. She just wanted to survive, to share her truth, and to help others feel less alone. But word about her story and her courage started to spread. It began with a local blog reposting one of her articles. Then a radio station called, asking her to speak about her journey. Soon after, a popular podcast invited her on, and from there, everything exploded. People were drawn to her honesty. She didn't sugarcoat the pain. She talked about losing her hair, her partner, her strength, and then slowly finding all three again in new ways. She shared how the Imara Foundation was helping real women in real time. Women in small towns, women in big cities, women who had never heard someone speak like this before. She made them feel seen. Adanna started getting messages from Ghana, South Africa, Kenya, even the UK. Her Instagram followers grew overnight. Brands wanted to collaborate. Magazines wanted her on their covers. Then came the big one, Africa 24 News. They flew a team out to Port Harcourt just to film a feature on her. She stood in front of the camera, nervous at first, but strong. She wasn't just telling her story anymore, she was telling their story. The story of every African woman who had ever felt invisible in pain. But this fame wasn't about selfies or hashtags. It wasn't about vanity. It was purpose. Every interview, every article, every spotlight was another door open for someone else who needed help. She used her platform to raise money for treatments, to launch awareness campaigns, to push hospitals to do better. Adanna had gone from lying in a hospital bed, sick and heartbroken, to becoming a CEO, a voice, a leader, a fighter. And through it all, she stayed grounded. Because she knew where she came from. She remembered the nights she cried alone. And now her mission was clear. No woman should ever have to feel like that again. This wasn't just healing. This was a movement. It had been 2 full years since Adanna last saw Tunde. 2 years since he vanished when she needed him most. 2 years since he chose comfort over commitment, silence over support. And in those years, she had changed. She had healed. She had become someone stronger, someone new. Then one evening, just as the sun dipped low over Port Harcourt, there was a knock at her gate. She wasn't expecting anyone. She peeked through the curtain and her heart paused. It was him. Tunde. He looked nothing like the man she remembered. His clothes hung loose on him. His eyes, once full of charm, looked tired and empty. He stood there, hands in his pockets, like a boy who had lost his way. She slowly opened the gate, not saying a word. Adanna, he said, barely meeting her eyes. I made a mistake. She didn't flinch. Didn't rush. She just looked at him, this man who once swore to love her, then walked away when her bones ached and her soul cracked. The same man who was laughing on rooftops while she was fighting to stay alive. He started to speak again, but she raised her hand gently. No anger. No bitterness. Just strength. I didn't, she said softly. Silence settled between them. She didn't need to scream or cry. Her peace said it all. She had built a life without him, a meaningful, beautiful life. She had touched hearts, saved lives, and found herself in the fire he refused to walk through. He came back expecting the girl he left. But she was long gone. What stood before him now was a woman whole, healed, and full of purpose. And as she gently closed the gate, he finally understood what he had lost. Not just a partner, but a rare kind of love. The kind that doesn't just survive storms, it becomes the storm. Adanna had every reason to scream at him, to let all the pain, all the betrayal come pouring out like fire. But when she stood there, face to face with the man who left her at her lowest, she felt none of that. No anger. No bitterness. Just peace. She looked at Tunde, the same man who had once held her hand and said, forever. The same man who vanished when her hair fell, when her body weakened, when her world crashed. Now he was back, broken in his own way, hoping to find something he had thrown away. But Adanna had changed. The girl who once cried on the bathroom floor, waiting for a message that never came, was gone. She didn't need to raise her voice to prove a point. Her silence had already done that. Her success had already answered every question. Her healing had already closed the chapter. I wish you healing, she said gently, looking him in the eyes. No sarcasm. No cruelty. Just a simple truth. He looked stunned. Maybe he expected a slap, a breakdown, a begging heart. But instead he got a woman who had already moved on, not just from him, but from the version of herself that had once needed him. And with that, Adanna turned and walked away. Not because she was trying to be dramatic, but because she had nothing left to hold on to. She had already let go a long time ago. Long before he knocked. Long before he realized what he lost. Her peace wasn't performative. It was real. Earned. Built through sleepless nights, silent prayers, and small brave steps forward. She wasn't the sick girl begging for love anymore. She was the woman who had walked through fire, and didn't just survive. She became the fire. Today, when people hear the name Adanna, they don't just think of cancer, or heartbreak, or pain, they think of strength. They think of hope. Her name echoes in classrooms, on TV screens, in women's conferences across the continent. The girl who once felt forgotten now helps thousands remember their worth. Her book, While He Left I Fought, became more than just a bestseller, it became a movement. It's now taught in universities, read in book clubs, shared in hospital waiting rooms. Not because it's a story of perfect healing, but because it's real. Raw. Brave. It tells the truth about what it means to be left behind and still rise. Adanna didn't write it to shame anyone. She didn't write it for revenge. She wrote it for every woman who ever thought she was too broken to begin again. For every girl who lost her hair and thought she lost her beauty. For every survivor who needed to be reminded, you are more than your scars. She built a foundation, started a movement, and became a light for others walking through darkness. Her story proved that healing is not just physical, it's spiritual, emotional, powerful. And in her final chapter, she didn't end with bitterness. She ended with truth. He lost a woman who would have walked through fire for him, she wrote. But I walked through it alone and became fire. That's Adanna's legacy. Not of pain but of power. Not of loss but of light.